As of patch 2.8, there are a total of 51 characters, 5 of which are obtainable completely for free without rolling on any banner. This leaves 46 characters to roll for, and with Sumeru characters incoming and more, that begs the question, how do you know who to pull? Hello, Count Sacke here, back with another Genshin Impact video. Some time ago, I watched a video from Blue Latte titled The Proper Way of Deciding on Limited Banners. It was really good. In summary, the video basically gives, mostly from a meta perspective, that when deciding on who to pull, a person should consider their priorities. In this video, I want to build upon what Blue Latte said in his video, as he actually has presented something I wanted to make a video on for a while now. The goal of this video is to try to get you to figure out what you want from a character without having to explain every little microscopic, extremely specific detail about each character. So, let's get started. The answer to knowing who to pull is actually quite simple. Know your priorities and choose based on them. There are many factors that contribute to one's priorities, but I believe it can boil down into two main categories: the character's utilities and qualities. There technically is a third aspect, and that's your personal biases. Even if you claim, and as much as you would like to be unbiased, no one is ever without bias. Even statistics has a pretty well hidden expression of bias that if you don't look carefully enough, you wouldn't even notice. Anyway, the utilities and qualities both have 3 subcategories, and each subcategory consists of traits. Keep in mind that there are a lot more intricacies to each of the different categories and traits. But the point of this video is to help you. Obviously, putting less hides a lot of the complexity, but as long as it embodies basically everything required, then it's fine. Adding more intricate details can give a better idea of what you want, but it does make things a lot more complicated, as you would have to think about and balance more traits. I mean, imagine trying to cook your breakfast while playing Genshin Impact Spiral Abyss 412 and completing your homework. Geez, you would have a hard time focusing since you're trying to do everything at once. In short, you want to make it simple, but not too simple that you lose details, and not too detailed that you add complexity that makes things difficult to understand. Let's break things down. Here's the first main category we'll focus on: utilities. Utilities are based on what you're going to use the character for. As mentioned earlier, there are 3 subcategories: combat, gameplay, and investment. For combat, this is usually what people on social media or online discussions like to talk about, especially on the content creator side of things. It goes into how a character performs when fighting against enemies. It's rather complicated and goes into a lot of different ideas, but I'll narrow things down. There are 4 traits in combat: damage, support, shielding, and healing. It's important to note that characters can have multiple capabilities. Damage is straightforward. It's how much health you can take out from an enemy through any means. Whether that means elemental reactions, elemental damage, physical damage, a popping bubble, a weapon effect, whether it's single target or AoE from an on-field main sub or burst DPS, etc. With or without buffs and nerfs, who cares? Getting that deep into all the different aspects is how you'll get confused. Support refers to a character's capability to enhance damage output, whether that be increasing the amount of damage dealt directly by the character or characters, or by weakening the enemies. Shielding is literally what it says: the ability to provide a shield for the character and how much it can endure. Lastly, healing is the amount of health that a character can regenerate for the team or individual characters. For the next subcategory, there's gameplay. This encompasses everything about controlling the character and how you put them into teams. The traits that I found the most important to consider were fun, mechanics, element, weapon type, flexibility, and movement. Fun is simply the enjoyment when playing the character. Mechanics refer to the things the character can do and how you can play them, such as elemental skill and burst, or even talents. Elements refer to what element a character is, including the reactions they have access to. It's important to consider, especially when making teams that revolve around specific elemental reactions. Weapon type refers to which weapon the character uses, like sword, catalyst, etc. Lastly, flexibility is how much you can vary a character's equipment or team compositions. Then for the last subcategory, there's investment. There were 5 traits that I could think of: materials cost, farming, primogems cost, skill mastery, and equipment. Materials cost refers to how much resin, mora, talent books, and enemy drops a character requires. Farming refers to the grind or effort to get the materials. Primogems cost is simply how many primogems or intertwined fates or whatever you need to get the character in the first place, or weapon, or whatever it is you're analyzing, or whatever. Skill mastery is the time spent training or mastering the gameplay required to play the character. Lastly, equipment refers to how much is needed or the difficulty to obtain artifacts and weapons for the character. In terms of access to information, there are plenty of content creators, guides, and so on which will detail a character's utility. You will find no shortage of sources to help you. There are things that can be difficult to gauge, such as fun. Fun is a subjective quantity and requires you to play the character first, so yeah. Then there's investment. Due to RNG, it can be a bit difficult to see how much resources you need to dedicate. In short, if you want to get something out of a character or to use them, utilities is what you would primarily look at. Now, let's get on to the next main category. Qualities are aspects about the character's identity. This can be broken down into 3 subcategories: personality, appearance, and lore. For personality, this is how the character acts. I split it down to 4 traits: behavior, voice, beliefs, and mannerisms. Behavior refers to the true nature of a character. Voice is simply how the character talks and sounds. Beliefs are the things that the character believes in. Lastly, dialogue is simply what the characters say in text. Appearance is all about the visual aesthetics of a character. There are 6 traits I considered: face, body, clothes, hair, animations, and expressions. The first 4 are self-explanatory. Animations refer to how the character moves. This can be for combat, idle animations, bursts, talking, walking, running, etc. Lastly, expressions are indicative of how the facial and bodily expressions look like. Lore consists of the following traits: the character's past, plot relevance, role in the world, relationships, and trivia. When I say relationships, I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, okay? This could be family, friend, lover, sibling, acquaintance, or stranger. Their backstory is, well, their past, typically written in their character stories. Their role in the world refers to what the character does, so it could be something like a job or occupation. Lastly, trivia refers to simple things about the character but don't really have a major impact on the main story, character arc, or etc. For example, this could be like their favorite food or what they say when it begins to rain. Do note that trivia does not include their opinions of other characters, as that is under relationships. Unfortunately, the only information about a character you can get pre-release is their physical appearance. You could get the character's lore from like story quests or the main plot of the game, and even hints about their personality from those, but it's not as complete. You do get some of the character opinions released on social media by Hoyoverse, but again, it's not much to go on. In summary, if you're more of just looking for a character you can appreciate for who they are as a person, then qualities are the thing to consider. For the third main category, there are personal biases. I label personal biases as basically the other category. This is an aspect which can vary drastically from person to person. Typically, these are things that are outside of the control of the character. Some examples I could think of off the top of my head are other upcoming new character or rerun characters, is a support to your main, collecting, shipping, content creation, other characters featured on the banner, waifu or husbando, account restrictions, willingness to gamble, challenges, etc. Literally anything can be included in here. As mentioned in its title, these are personal and depend on the person, so how easy it can be to access information varies a lot. So basically, if you feel like just pulling a character because why not, then maybe take a look at your biases. Okay, now that you know the many factors to consider, how do we actually use them? Well, you're in luck. I decided to make a figure that maps out everything I've covered so far. I didn't include any subcategories or traits under personal biases in this figure because, as I've mentioned, they depend on you. You could literally have a bias to pull characters you don't like. Anyway, this chart is meant to show you what you want from a character. The main idea is that you have 100 points and you need to allocate them based on what you want. Notice how there are lines beside each major category, subcategory, and trait. The lines next to the words are where you indicate your score and priority for a character to have that corresponding trait. A higher score means that you want or quote-unquote need the aspect more than others with lower scores. This should help you figure out what your personal priorities are at the time you fill out the chart. I specifically chose 100 points because it's easy to convert to percentages. I would avoid using decimals and only put integers. For example, let me expose myself by filling out this chart myself. I would like to say that this would be if I didn't have a strong personal bias at the moment. I'll be sure to show you my current priority chart so I can expose myself even further.
Hello everyone. First off, I would like to apologize for the drastic change in microphone quality, and this is because I'm using my laptop microphone. I was using my iPad's microphone for doing the voiceover, however, since I'm doing this live, well, yeah. Anyway, so let's get started. Basically, this chart has a few things here. We have the overall figure, which we are going to fill out. We have our name here, which I won't be putting because you know who I am. We have instructions over here, and over here we have an explanation about the traits. So basically, if we try and think about this, we complete the sentence by saying, how much do you care about the character to be strong? How much do we care about the character's buffing and nerfing capability, if any? So, we have 100 points, and what I'm going to do is, I would say that if I do not have any personal biases, so I'm going to assume that this is 0, and I'll leave that blank just to implicitly say that it's 0. So here we have utilities and qualities. I definitely care more about qualities much more than utility, and I would say it's about 70-30. So notice here that we have 70 plus 30 plus 0. 0 is from the personal biases. We don't want this to be less than 100, we want it to be exactly 100. And the reason why is because, like I said earlier, it's easy to convert to percentages. So 70% of my decision in getting a character is their qualities. And 30% of my reasoning for getting a character is their utility. Let's go ahead and fill out utilities. I think this is a little easier for me to do. I would say that I care equally about the combat and gameplay, so I'll split it 50-50, so 15 and 15. For this one, I would say that the majority of my gameplay aspect is in fun, so I will put a 10 here. So yeah, we have 10, and I tend to care a bit about how to play the character, so I would say a 3 here, and I also say I care quite a bit about the character's elements. I do not care about the weapon type, the team and gear flexibility, or the movement, so I'm going to leave those as 0. So once again, notice here that 10 plus 3 plus 2, that's 15. So if we add these all up, that's 15. And I think you get the point now. That's what I mean by split. So we split 30 into 15 plus 15. We split this 15 into 10 plus 3 plus 2. Yeah, this is basically my priority chart. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense on how you're supposed to actually do this. And yeah.
Basically, this is how I would typically judge a character. Here's my current focus at the moment, by the way. While it's great and all to know your priorities, how do we actually determine who to pull now? Now that we have this idea, we can use it to gauge which characters you want to get or determine who your priorities are. So let's say that there's an upcoming character for either release or rerun that you're thinking about getting, but don't really know if you actually want to get. You essentially grade the character out of 100. You can have a score higher than 100 because you can get more out of a character than what you wanted, but only if you really think they excel greatly in certain traits. Here are some things to note about grading a character. The most important thing to note is that you don't want to overinflate the score of the character. There are a few guidelines I can recommend. 1. Avoid grading traits that you didn't allocate any points to in your priority chart. In other words, don't grade something that you don't care about. However, if you really, and I mean really, think the trait is something notable, then consider the next tip. 2. If you think a character is exceptional at a specific trait, you can grade it higher than what you put on the chart. However, I'd recommend that you don't grade it higher than 110% of the subcategory score on the priority chart. Round it up. These guidelines essentially make sure that the traits you care about have the biggest impact on the grade. Obviously, 110% of 5 is less than 110% of 20, or 10, or any number bigger than 5. We'll see how this plays out when I grade a character. The second thing I would like to say to make things easier when grading is to start from the traits, then add up the scores for the grade on their subcategories, and so on until you reach an overall score for the character. Now, let me give you an example. Here's my priority chart again. You might notice that I'm heavily prioritizing who I might pull based on my personal bias and their qualities. I'll grade Zhongli first.
Hello, it's me again. We are here to grade Zhongli. Yeah, I have some things to point out, so here once again we have some instructions. They are different, so be sure to read them. And we also have some other things, like you can put the name. I would recommend don't put your actual name, use your online alias. And you have character name. You don't need to put it because technically I put the picture here. And you have your list of biases, plenty of space for you to put them. Then you can explanation of traits. You can say how much do you think the character is strong, how much do you think the character's gameplay is enjoyable. Yeah, you get the point. Just complete the sentence and you can understand what each of these traits mean. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah. For me, when I start off with Zhongli, I won't deny the biggest reason why I am getting Zhongli, or one of the biggest reasons, is my personal bias. So if we see here, I have a personal bias of 30 right here. As I have said here in one of my things, I can assign an integer score no more than 1.1 times the assigned subcategory priority score. So my subcategory priority score is 30, and I would say that my personal biases is quite high on this one. So I'm going to make sure I put a lot of it into it. So for me, I think I'm going to put a maximum. So what I'm going to do is do 30 times 1.1. I'm going to technically round that up. So I'm just going to put this is technically just a ceiling function. It's just an indication that I'm rounding up, but I'll show it to you right now. So this is 33. So I'm going to put a 33 in my personal bias, and don't judge me. It is my thing. So, and I get to choose what I want to pull a person for. The next thing we can do is talk about their utilities. For this, Zhongli does not have any healing, or he does, but that's at his C6, and I personally will never probably ever get a limited time 5-star character in my lifetime. I don't believe I'll ever get one. So yeah, so over here I have like 1s over here and everything, and I have a 4. His shield, that is definitely going to be maximum. So we have, again, we got 4 times 1.1, and that's, well, 4.4. And like we said, we round that up to a 5. So I'm going to put a 5 in shielding because I think he's absolutely amazing at shielding. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And then for the other things, he can function as a support, but he requires an artifact set. But he's pretty. I would just say he's pretty good overall. So he meets my expectations. So I would say he gets a 1, which is exactly what I have in here. Personally, I think he does pretty good damage, especially his burst. I think, yeah, his damage will actually pay off a bit. And over here, we can sum this all up. That should be a 10. Alright, so basically I've filled out the rest of it. That way you don't need to watch me contemplate about everything else. And yeah, this is my stuff. You can see that, yeah, quite a bit of the reason why I'm getting Zhongli is because of, well, his qualities. Quite a bit of the second biggest reason is because of his personal biases, and there is a bit of also utility. I won't deny that, yes, I do want to use I do also want to have Zhongli in a specific team I have in mind, and I think he will do great in that team. So we can add up all of these to get 27 plus 33 plus 70. What does that give us? That is 130. So there's something that I want to point out. This 100 score is not about expectations. So you might notice here, here we have a score of 130, which is greater than 100. This does not mean that Zhongli exceeds my expectations. What this means is that he gives me more than what I want. Because remember, when I did this thing, this shows what you want from a character. You would want to get a character that you can use I can use for me, at least for me, I like to get a character I can use for chipping fuel. I like to get a character who I think has nice qualities and some utility. So yeah, and if they are able to meet this 100%, what that means is that they basically have everything I want. What you want is not necessarily what you should expect. Okay, so basically what you can do is you can have a threshold. So this threshold can be at maybe you can have 100 is what you want. But these two should, as much as possible, your expectations should not be what you want. What you should do is you set your expectations a little bit lower, because you're probably, the characters I felt like I wanted to pull, they did not reach 100. So do not put 100 as your baseline, or at least if you want, you could, but you're gonna have a really difficult time unless you're really, really generous on what you're doing. So 100 is what you want, the baseline. It's your baseline. And maybe you could say if the character has a score of 90 or above, greater than or equal to 90, you can say that maybe that's a character you will pull. And well, your expectation there would be 90. If your expectation is 75, well, then that means that this is your expectation, that the character has a score of 75. But if they don't meet that score, maybe they're 50 or something, then maybe it's best that you don't do it. Of course, you could decide to do that, but that is technically a personal bias. So yeah, overall, these scores are just to basically give you an idea of that, hey, this is what you want, and it's up to you to figure out what your expectation should be. Should it be that the score is 90? Should it be that the score is at least 80? Maybe higher? I don't know. It's up to you. You have to figure that out on your own.
So once you've graded a handful of characters, take a look at their scores. Those with a higher score obviously have a greater priority for who you want to pull. For me, unless I know I can guarantee the characters I want the most, it is very likely I won't pull on the banner. I recommend to only have at most 2 characters that receive this special priority of will not pull unless I can guarantee them. Of course, there are some exceptions that I'll mention in a bit. Based on my personal scores, it's clear that I would prioritize getting Zhongli. Other characters I thought of getting about are Yaemiko, Kokomi, and Shenhe. However, I will literally not roll for any other 5-star unless I can guarantee Zhongli. Personally, I'm willing to roll for 4 stars if I'm not near soft pity and don't have a guarantee, but that's just me. Of course, as new characters come out, maybe the newer characters beat the scores of your current priorities, but again, that depends. This chart technically applies to when getting anything in Genshin Impact. However, it has a heavy focus on characters that you don't have yet. When it comes to constellations, those only apply to utilities. Weapons are also based mostly on utility, but do have some qualities, particularly in its appearance and lore. Unless you really want to get more utility out of a character, being C0 is probably enough. So yeah, that's my thoughts on how someone should determine who they want to pull. I always see people posting about how they basically want every single character that gets announced and say that they're out of Primogems or whatnot. I think people really need to remember that while it would be nice to have everything you want, realistically, it's extremely hard and costly to do that. Hopefully these charts I've provided can help. I love all of Genshin Impact's characters. There is not one I would say that I dislike. However, especially as an F2P, it's statistically and practically impossible for me to get all of them. This means that I have to be very careful about who I want to get. Knowing this has led me to believe in only pulling for characters that are in the utmost highest priority. I will make my way down the list of characters I want. I won't be able to get everyone, but at least I can be happy with who I have. Thanks for watching and hope you've enjoyed.